On the 25th of November 1994, a day after Thanksgiving, a missing persons report was filed in Downey, California. 3 females, a mother and her 2 daughters, had vanished into thin air, so it seemed. The search for the trio had started off on the wrong foot, as they were illegal immigrants of the country.
Mother and her 2 teenage daughters who had basically fallen off the face of the earth.
It was later discovered that the missing were 36-year-old Luz Messino and her 2 teenage daughters, 17-year-old Edith and 16-year-old Gabriella. The police, for a while, were unsure if they even had the right names. All they left behind was an empty apartment with bloodstains. There were no strong leads to follow up on, and no concerned family members. At least, not any that they could trace. What happened to Luz and her daughters? How did 3 members of a family disappear without a trace? Would they ever be found? Luz Maria Messino was a mother to 4 children. She was a single mother of 2 daughters, Gabriella and Edith Messino. No information is known about the father of the girls. Her other 2 children were with her live-in boyfriend, Estanislao Pedro Gonzalez. Given the fact that they immigrated to the United States, a lot isn't known about the early life of Luz and her daughters. The day after Thanksgiving in 1994, Luz's friend, whose identity remains undisclosed, began to worry as she had been unable to reach Luz for days. When her unannounced visit to Luz's new house was met with no response and a locked door, she filed a missing persons report for Luz and her daughters. This friend had given Luz's home address to the police, and on the 8th of December 1994, investigators searched Luz's home. It was found empty, but had suspicious signs all throughout the house. It had been scrubbed with bleach. The cabinets and closet doors were flung open, and brownish-red stains were found in various locations of her home, including the bedroom carpets, door floorboards, lower edges of the walls, and the closet. The closet was described as washed, not stained, with the brownish-red hue. This stain was speculated to be blood. With all the evidence they had found at the house, the investigators ruled this case as a homicide. The forensic bit of the investigation began when Steve Renteria, a criminologist with the Los Angeles County Crime Laboratory, was brought to investigate the scene. He ran chemical tests on the stains in the different areas of the apartment, and it was determined to be human blood. After this, he used luminol to try to identify other possible stains that might have been missed. The entire apartment was coated with luminol, and what they found was truly horrifying.
How much blood volume it would have to take to see that pattern, we weren't really able to say that to the detective, but inside I knew something bad had really happened.
A path of blood was seen in the carpet. The path was about 2 feet wide, and it traveled down from one bedroom, across the hallway, looped into another bedroom, and ended in the closet where the largest of the stains had been found. Steve inferred that someone must have bled to death, or at least to the brink of death. However, without substantial data to back up his inference, he couldn't report that to the detectives. The detectives also had suspicions of their own, but without solid evidence, the case couldn't be solved. As the investigation progressed, detectives found out that the mother and her daughters didn't live alone. There was a male figure in the house, Luz's boyfriend, Estanislao Pedro Gonzalez. The only other person who got questioned was the manager of the establishment Gonzalez and Luz worked for. The couple worked in the same costume shop on Woodruff Avenue. The manager told investigators that prior to their disappearance, Gonzalez had called to inform him that the family was moving back home to Mexico.
By this, because he had signed a year lease for this place, And less than a week later, he's moving out. So she asked him what was going on, and he said, well, we're not getting along, and she's going back to Mexico, and I'm leaving.
He told the manager that Luz was not available, so he would be coming down to the shop to get their last paychecks. The manager explained to Gonzalez that a third party couldn't be involved in paycheck clearance, and Luz had to come and get her own, and he could only get his. The manager waited for them, but neither of them ever showed up. Finding him suspicious, the police decided to look further into Luz and Gonzalez's relationship. Luz and Gonzalez's relationship was described as stormy. They had a long history, but they seemed to have taken a series of breaks in their relationship. In 1990, they became parents to twins, a boy named Carlos and a girl named Raquel. Further information concerning the twins were withheld by the police to protect their privacy. About a year after the twins' birth, they went on another break, and it lasted 3 years. But they settled their differences, one would guess, because in November of 1994, they moved into an apartment in the 11,600 block of Old River School Road. Downey, together with Luz's daughter and the couple's now 4-year-old twins. But less than a week after moving in together, it seemed like the couple weren't going to work out after all. The building manager saw Gonzalez packing his things. Gonzalez had just signed a 1-year lease and had been seen with his girlfriend and their children days prior. Out of curiosity, the building manager inquired where he was going. Gonzalez had announced that they were finally over. Luz was moving back to Mexico, and he was not going to remain in the apartment. All this info only further made Gonzalez seem like a character to be questioned, but they had no idea where he had gone, or if he was even alive. The police also set up surveillance on the Mexico border trying to find Gonzalez and his van. But Gonzalez was never found, and eventually, with no leads, the trail went cold. Sergeant Jim Elsesser was closing in on his retirement, so in 1999 he decided to take up a cold case. As luck would have it, he chose the Luz et al. Case. Like every other detective that had worked on the case, Sergeant Jim believed the case was a homicide, and the boyfriend would be instrumental to solving the case. DNA testing had begun being utilized by 1999, and the samples taken from the scene were retested. The results showed that the blood samples originated from 2 different individuals. Further testing showed that the individuals were female and related to each other. It became even clearer that something terrible had happened in that apartment, but it still wasn't enough. The information was not conclusive, nor was it irrefutable. Due to the lack of substantial evidence, Luz's case still officially remained a missing persons case. So investigators tried to comb through other states. They checked for missing person alerts in neighboring cities and states, but they got nothing. They even checked for missing person alerts in Mexico, but nothing turned up. They reached out to the family doctor of both Luz and Gonzalez, but the doctor hadn't heard or seen either of them. There were no bank records, no cell phone records at the time. Every answer left in the case seemed to lie with the runaway boyfriend. The identity of the DNA samples found at the apartment were still officially unknown, and genetic material from relatives was needed. There wasn't any forthcoming lead or family member from Mexico available, so Luz's twins were the only blood relatives known to the police. They needed to be found and tested. Then, in a stroke of luck, the vehicle identification number to Gonzalez's van was run through the national records. It was discovered that he had recently registered his van in Las Vegas. After corresponding with the police department in Las Vegas, it was confirmed that Gonzalez had been living in the desert city, and the twins were with him. Criminologists made it clear to detectives that DNA from either of these children could be used to create a genetic profile that could be tested against the bloodstains found at the apartment. If one of the bloodstains matched with the living children as their mother, the other bloodstain would by default be a daughter's DNA. The detectives set off to Las Vegas to retrieve saliva samples of the twins. In 2003, detectives from Los Angeles collaborated with Los Angeles detective Linda Turner. Gonzalez was traced to a trailer park along Boulder Highway. They had nothing solid on Gonzalez yet, and they couldn't risk messing up the case, so they used a ruse so as not to alert him to their real motive. They pretended to be Child Protective Services, and on February 3, 2003, they knocked on Gonzalez's trailer door. Gonzalez was apparently quite cooperative with the officers and even let them talk to his children.
That we could look around his trailer, that we could talk to him, that we could talk to the kids.
The officers asked them questions regarding their school, health, and other questions typical of Child Protective Services. Then they asked Gonzalez about their mother.
I asked him, by the way, where's the mother of these children? And he appeared extremely startled.
Gonzalez appeared shocked by the question, before giving the classic response that she had left him. The children seemed blank upon hearing this question. They simply answered they didn't have a mother. Upon performing a house inspection, the officers reported that they were living in appalling conditions. The house was dirty and filled with dog feces. There was some food, but the entire setting was disorganized. However, so as not to make him suspicious, they complimented Gonzalez on being such a strong single father. The officers then left, but later went back to see the children at the local Boys and Girls Club. The children recognized them from their first visit, and there was no resistance. The officers claimed to have come for a health check. After basic chit-chat, they handed the children toothbrushes and had them illustrate how they brushed their teeth. This was how detectives took mouth swabs from both children. After testing the saliva samples from the twins, the DNA results showed that the children were direct descendants of the blood found in the closet. This helped officers conclude that Luz Messino had bled in the closet. This was a step in the right direction, and now it was time to face Gonzalez. Gonzalez had a sister, Dalia Gonzalez Mora, who lived near the Jordan High School in South Carolina. A young girl who worked with Mora's daughter at a Burger King had gone missing. The police didn't want Mora to know they were investigating her brother, so in early 2003 they approached her under the guise of questioning her regarding the missing Burger King employee case. Strangely, the first thing Mora said when she opened the door was, "I was wondering when you guys were going to come over here." Mora wasn't helpful with the missing girl case, so the authorities left to return another day. Before this, with the help of the Las Vegas police, Gonzalez's phone was wiretapped, and the detectives awaited to unleash their scheme. The detectives returned to Mora's home days after their first visit. This time they asked about Luz Messino and her daughters directly. Mora denied any knowledge of Luz and her daughters. But 5 minutes after the police left, Mora drove to a payphone to call her brother. She informed him of her little visit from the police. She told him that the police had been asking about him and Luz, and it seemed like trouble. She offered to drive Gonzalez and the children to Mexico. Unknown to the siblings, the police had been listening to every word of their conversation through the wiretap on Gonzalez's phone. The police quickly got in touch with the Las Vegas detectives to track down Gonzalez before he made a run for it. Gonzalez was walking his children back home from the Boys and Girls Club when the police approached him. They mentioned that they wanted to talk about Luz Messino, and he reportedly went pale and was visibly shaken. The twins were also very upset by their father being led away, but Detective Linda Turner stayed back to comfort them.
Detectives took him away across the parking lot to another vehicle, and my partner and I stayed with the twins as we already had a rapport with them. They were obviously upset seeing their dad being taken away. We stayed with them, comforted them.
Gonzalez was arrested and taken into questioning on May 1st, 2003, where he was made to believe that they had evidence pointing to him. Gonzalez went into a frenzy, wondering how they could have evidence against him to the murders. How could he have killed all those people? Every time he said the word kill, he made a stabbing motion with his hand. The detectives were quick to point it out. When he realized the detectives were reading into the stabbing motions, he quickly became sarcastic and defensive. He remained firm in his stance that he had no idea or involvement in the disappearance of his girlfriend or her daughters.
You can prove it.
Okay, now you can prove that I killed these people.
Yeah.
Did I did this with my own hands? Did I kill these people?
Yes, you're involved in their murders.
He stated, you think I killed them? You think I killed them? Well, he did that. He was motioning in a stabbing manner.
Or did I personally kill them
You gonna answer, what's this?
with a knife or whatever?
Then, hours into questioning, his story changed. He claimed 2 apartment movers had stabbed Luz and the girls to death. He then wound up helping them dump the bodies in a Los Angeles riverbed. No one bought that story, and he was booked based on his confession of being at the scene and being an accessory. Gonzalez, at the age of 48, was booked on May 1st, 2003, on the suspicion of triple homicide that was committed between November 24th and December 6th of 1994. He, of course, pleaded not guilty. As the trial date neared, his story changed again. His attorneys approached the district attorney in the hopes of striking a deal. Gonzalez confessed to the murders of his girlfriend and her daughters in a 1-page statement. As part of the deal, he did not have to explain how he committed the murders and how he cleaned it up. He revealed he had dumped their bodies in the Nevada desert. So after being found guilty of all charges, 49-year-old Gonzalez was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on June 21, 2004. Mora was also arrested on account of suspicion of murder, but the Los Angeles County District Attorney didn't press charges because there was not sufficient evidence to conduct a trial. Gonzalez's body dumping story checked out with police records. On March 26, 1996, some kids walking a dog stumbled upon a body in a ditch near Hollywood Boulevard, just outside of Las Vegas. As local authorities were called to the scene, they discovered 2 more bodies. Newspaper reports at the time had tagged them the Hollywood Jane Does because they assumed they were one of the many sex workers that had got flown into Las Vegas. Now, after Gonzalez's confession, the bones from this discovery were dug up and tested against the samples from the crime scene. The bodies indeed belonged to Luz Messino and her daughters, Edith and Gabriela. The mother and daughters currently lay in Palm Memorial Park, Las Vegas. Everyone who worked on the case never forgot the children. Luz's twins lost their mother and sisters at the age of 4. They didn't even know about the existence of their sisters, and Gonzalez consistently had told them that they didn't have a mother. The only family they did know, their father, was now going to be locked up for the rest of his life. The twins were placed into a Las Vegas foster care soon after. The detectives and the public, despite the case being solved and closed, still have unanswered questions. Why did Gonzalez kill them? Did he work alone? How did he clean up so fast? Whether these questions will ever be answered remains to be seen. But at least we know that Gonzalez will face a life behind bars as he pays for his crimes.